Okay. Also, I think I've actually figured out what the issue was. It's the typical OBS. Oh, you gotta turn OBS off. So,
Us got that.
yep, that's always fun. Realizing that that's all that I wanted to actually do, basically. So, yep, it's hearing you loud and clear here. So,
Sweet, sweet.
okay. Alrighty. So, basically just stop the recording, go to the recording for the YouTube guest. And basically, first thing that we're going to be talking about is like just ambu naked, like just basically being more like discreet about the things that you're going to actually do. So what I'm going to do here is let me share screen. Let's go to no, let's just do my entire screen.
Well, here's the sleep shop's answer.
Alright. So are you able to view what I'm viewing right now?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So, and now let's go over to game here. Alright. And looks like everything else is still looking fine on here. So, what we are going to be trying to look at then, like you're saying, is try to actually mix up different ways that we can actually approach people, like try to, because like you said, like I think it does tie into a lot of the questions that you're asking about, like trying to actually use more, because you mentioned trying to also use more of like your jumps and things like that, like in neutral. You feel like you should be able to actually use that a bit more with Joker, as well as just different ways to try to actually get them to open up besides the obvious, I'm just going to run in and dash attack you, or I'm just going to run in and shield against you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because like oftentimes, like against like certain situations when I'm like quite desperate, I'm
mhm.
like, oh man, all my neutral wins are just coming from like shooting gun, doing some short hops, and then checking them with dash attack burst range. That's like sometimes I just get a lot of neutral openings from that. And I'm like, this is fun, but like we're not getting much reward from it.
Mhm. Mm. So would you say that's basically like your ways that you try to actually open people up then is because that's what I was about to lead into the next thing is what are kind of ways you like to actually open people up, like with bait and punish?
So generally speaking, what I usually try to do is I usually like to play like a mid range and then
Mm-hmm.
try to just try to poke them with gun and just sort of see what they do. Then I try to just do a lot of like short hop nair because it's just a general good coverage. And then because I can whiff nair pretty easily, I usually just do like an F tilt to cover too.
Yeah.
So essentially, I just try to establish like, hey, I'm gonna whiff and take this space. What are you gonna do about it? And then usually once they try to like punish one of my safe whiffs, I'll try to just go for a standard whiff punish like a dash grab or dash attack.
Gotcha.
And then I sometimes try to like implement like landing pressure at times with like nair or like empty landing and whatnot. But I feel I could be a bit more purposeful with it. But yeah, generally like just a lot of like neutral air and forward tilt, just trying to debate a reaction
Mm-hmm.
because it looks punishable at like a certain distance. I want them to kind of come in.
Gotcha. So basically what you're saying is like you'll do kind of like gun, maybe like more so right here, and then you'll sometimes try to jump in and do nair, like you're going to come in like just basically whiff and then see what they're going to do about it, and then try to do
Yeah,
some.
like
Yep, go ahead.
and dash back is possibly to my detriment. It's something I do kind of rely on quite a lot. Like, I do like dash back a lot.
Okay.
But even just like what you're doing now, sometimes is doing like some short hops. I also try to do just to wait something out.
Okay. Yeah, those all sound like good options there in order to actually get someone to open up. Um, Whenever you're actually playing against them, whenever you're actually trying to actually get them to take the bait. Because the biggest thing with I'm going to swap over to let's see back over here.
Oh yeah.
So let's see here. So The biggest thing with trying to actually open someone up, and I'll swap this over so other people can be able to see it later too, is so the ultimate way to actually open up someone and confuse the opponent is that you want to overwhelm them and show them like a mixture of things. So basically, that's, as you said before, timing up when you'll do attacks or approaches. That's actually annoying me a little bit. Stop sharing or hide that. There we go. So, like timing up when you'll do attacks or like timings up when you'll do approaches. So, and this is something that you're kind of already doing. You said that yourself, is that you'll sometimes try to short hop in plays. Maybe you'll decide to actually decide to dash in and shield. So you kind of get that idea about it. And then the other thing is like deciding to delay when you're going to actually do attacks, which again you get the idea of is like the short hops. Maybe you'll decide to like, short hop once, short hop twice, and then like you'll do your attack. So that way you'll mix up when it is that you're actually going to come in. The other thing that we might want to talk about a bit more is the second point, which is like the way that you'll try to actually approach people. And also the other thing that I think is that not only trying to approach people, but also making sure that you're feeding them basically what it is that they should be scared of. Because the idea of feints is that, let's swap back over to the game here. So the idea of feints is that you have to actually sell them a story of like what they should be afraid of. So if you're going to come in, like you said, like you jump in and you decide to do nair and you whiff it, that's good because that is a feint itself. But instead of actually just like trying to intentionally whiff it, instead try to hit them with the nair and like get combos started from it. So that way the next time that like say you decide that you want to feint it, they now have something in their mind that they are afraid of actually happening. So that might actually get them to be like more defensive or like be able to actually allow you to do more feints. So like you jump in one time and then you go for like your grab combo after that, like off the nair. You might be starting to play someone who, say for example, now will actually tense up a bit more in neutral. So now they're going to actually decide to shield whenever they see you come down and like do your nair, because then they're going to try to actually punish you out of shield for it. So instead of actually doing that, that's where you can now incorporate those feints that you're talking about, like being able to just short hop and then go for your grab, or even be able to like short hop, play around and shield, so that way you're not giving them what they were expecting at first, even though that's what you gave them in the first place.
Yeah.
And you have that kind of idea about it. So I guess my question is there something that you're confused about with it, or like you
So
just...
So I think that I kind of understand the premise, but in execution, I think if I had to guess, one of my issues is that I might not always know what I'm looking for exactly, like what kind of reactions I'm looking for, and then like what to do accordingly in each situation. So like shield in particular is one that I do kind of like sometimes when I'm just doing my game plan, things like run up shield can be kind of problematic a lot. And of course, the simple thing is to grab them, but sometimes I struggle to like once they like aggressively take that space at times, I get a little overwhelmed.
Okay, because of maybe, is it because like not expecting them to actually come in with the shield like that moment?
Yeah, it could be like unexpected timing, or if my opponent is also trying to be ambiguous and do like feints as well, they're trying to do like a similar thing to me. So like if my opponent is also like short hopping around, I am like trying to play around their burst range and things of that line. I'm trying to like see what it could be to like, if I'm gonna swing first, what would I do in order to get into at least an advantageous situation if I'm at least not winning neutral.
Okay. So if I were to, let me set this up then. So if I were to have them not shield, go into not full hops. Just have them mash and neutral and jump. Oh, you're full hopping. I told you not to full hop. So that's false. Will that fix it? Nope. I think there was one other. Fast fall, falling aerials, full hops. Nope. What is? I know there was a taco for, but basically, like you're saying, like, oh, you're basically saying like you get them to actually just jump in like neutral bait, or they're jumping basically in neutral, and like you're just trying to figure out when you should actually decide to go ahead and punish them, because like you're afraid of like the aerial coming out at any time.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Because like while like I could directly air to air them, sometimes like air to airing them can be good, but I feel like the reward isn't always there necessarily. So, I mean, you could kind of show them not to necessarily like, hey, you can't just like full hop on me for free.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, a trap I find myself falling into is if someone's in the air, I'll try to just dash back, and then oftentimes I just end up giving up a lot of stage, or in a worst case scenario, they like overshoot their aerial, and then I'm suddenly in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of another similar issue I see, because like I said, I very much feel like more comfortable on the ground, and I guess my discomfort in the air also can kind of extend to dealing with other opponents when they're in the air,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to playing like an air-centric game where we're both jumping around a lot.
Why am I thought I turned my notifications off. I'm just seeing something because I think that's on my side. Enable desktop notification. Be looking for enable unread. I'm pretty sure I turned that off. Yeah, that's off. Okay, so it must be coming through your mic then, which that's no problem. But yeah, back here. So this is something that we may have already tried to talk about before. In the previous session about like when someone is actually trying to jump in, and like instead of like doing feints, but like jump in and try to actually pressure you, just kind of like to get over like a grounded option. It usually is best to try to like stay grounded and actually try to contest them like from like say below instead of like try to come at them from the side oftentimes, unless it just depends on your character's kit. But normally it's just easier to hit someone as they're jumping up like that, like catching them out of the air, like from, you know, start up like this or right below it, and then saving. I think we discussed like saving the like, you know, with punish on the ground for like if you know for a fact that they are going to actually do something. Because what it sounds like you're saying is that you're thinking that they're going to actually do an attack when they're jumping in, so that's why you back away. But instead of them doing an attack, they just jump in and they just take up the space.
Exactly. That's kind of a scenario I'm a little afraid of at times.
Okay.
And then since of course like the mix up of course, you know, if they do swing and I try to contest it, sometimes I might get hit out, or if I just dash back and they take stage.
Okay. So so if I'm understanding it correctly, then the thing with it is like you understand that like if you actually go and like, you know, attack them like out of the air, that it'll eventually might get them to maybe either swing like coming down, or it may actually decide to actually get them to stop jumping. You maybe just don't see like too much reward off of doing something like this, like just swinging them out of the air.
So I almost feel like it's not gonna be enough of an incentive to get them to back off.
Gotcha. So it's like you're wanting something to be more of a hard punish in order to actually get them to stop.
Yeah, because oftentimes like a lot of my reward just comes from the ground and like landing with grab, essentially, because grab is just gonna be like my greatest reward, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're in the air a lot, like getting them out of the air and like getting meaningful punishes can be like a lot more difficult. It's like one of my go-to options when they're in the air is just like a jump in neutral air. It's pretty reliable and safe, but of course the reward's not super high. And you know, oftentimes I'll see myself even like we're not like, the players are naturally going to be smart, so like they'll see that I'm trying to air to air them, and then they'll just like wait or drift back, and then I get punished.
Okay.
But I guess at that point, it's almost just kind of like playing Smash. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like it'll,
It's not.
which that's the good thing about it. Is like if it's getting back to that play of like playing like that triangle, since that's what Smash is, just like a rock paper scissors, then like it just basically evolves itself back into just like mixing up and just trying to catch each other. But going back into like I guess trying to have like a meaningful punish for it, that might be just something that you might need to just look into yourself a little bit. The only things that I might come into mind about it, because oftentimes it's not going to be too much reward like damage wise, but at the end of the day, what this is doing is like it's basically telling them that anytime that you see them jumping into the air to prepare for an attack, you're ready to basically stop them from doing it, which that honestly should be a reward in itself, because it's going to get them to either be more grounded, or it's going to get them to do what you're wanting them to do originally, which is them decide to like do an aerial as they're coming down. So you do have mash and neutral on, and so let's turn this off, and then let's have you do a aerial as you come down. So let's say for example we get Robin to do forward air here, delay the fast fall is on, falling aerial is on, and aerial delay by I'd say 15 frames. Oh, so that's how you actually get them to actually stay in place. That's nice. So let's see, something like, so yeah, basically before you were punishing them as they were rising like that, like they're rising and you're punishing them like this. So instead of them empty hopping back to the ground like they were doing before, you're now getting them to actually, do this attack so you can come back in. Because that's basically all that you're wanting them to do by stuffing them in the air, is getting them to do, it's to either stay more grounded or get them to be more aggressive, so that way you can be able to do your whip punishes like you were wanting to do before, like with your dash back, and get ground punishes.
And that makes sense.
So yeah, so that'd probably be like the only reward that like maybe you can try to get off that situation. Maybe another one that I just kind of thought of right now is if this one could be a lot more damaging, depending on, let's see, because I believe this is something that Leo does sometimes too when he was playing his Joker. No. Actually, set all menus. That should be it. Okay. So I want you to, let's go ahead and have you jump again. On. Okay. So something that you can maybe also consider if you're looking for a really hard punish. Yeah, I don't know if this will actually like, true confirm for it, but you know how Joker does like his fair one drag down confirms. Well, if you skip the first fair because they're already in the air and just go for the immediate drag down, that might actually be a kill confirm for you. Something
That's true.
something kind of like that. Now, I'm not too sure if it actually is true at that moment, just because I didn't have. Well, we can test it here. Let's see.
I do want to say it's true. I feel like I've generally I kind of like catch like landings and disadvantage or if you're in a corner with a setup kind of like that, but using that as a means of like opening up the neutral is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If you just get a lot of data that they're going to be doing this, it could. I feel like they lose a stock to it. They're going to be less incentivized to get caught by it again.
Right. So that's probably what you're wanting, is like just something more meaningful, kind of like this, to actually incentivize them to stop.
Definitely.
Okay, so yeah. So that could be something more meaningful that, like, a higher percentage you can do to actually basically make them think twice about going for it. Is doing like drag down into a kill, or drag down like at mid percents into grabs. and then getting good damage off of it, because that'll definitely send a message to them that they need to stop actually just jumping, like, jumping and just fainting all the time. Because basically how you beat feints is just to actually not be afraid of what it is that they're doing. Especially, like I said before, if you're not selling the opponent what it is that they should be afraid of, which is if you're not selling them the idea of like with Robin jumping or like Joker jumping into the air, you're not selling them the idea that you're going to be coming down with an aerial on their shield, or laying on top of them and do an aerial, then they'll never be afraid of you just like jumping in place like this, like short hopping, full hopping, because they know it's all just bluffs, and then they're just going to take their turn and just kill you off of it, or like get out disadvantage because of it. So that's the biggest.
That makes a lot of sense.
So that's the biggest thing that I wanted to actually point out with oh, I thought my mouse died. There you go. So that is the biggest thing that I wanted us to look at with feints.
Yeah, because like oftentimes I feel I might be like trying to like force the feint, and I almost feel like sometimes I don't actually throw out the moves enough. I'll try to just be too passive and not sort of like commit directly, and just try to commit with like feints. But you're right, if I'm not actually like throwing out my moves, they don't have any reason to respect it.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely hard too, because the biggest thing about like with feints is that you have to be confident that you sold them the feints, that like you sold them the attacks that you're doing before. You have to be confident that they're actually afraid enough of it in certain situations that they won't swing back at you, because literally running forward against like say a zoner who had like Robin for example, or Samus, running towards them should get you charge shot, or should get thunder spell hit at you like 99% of the time. But if you sold them that you've had different ways, or like if you sold them that like with Joker for example, you have Rebel Guard, so you should be able to take that and then you get Arsene off of it, or you sell them different ways that like you've figured out that you can get around their spells, then they're going to be more hesitant to actually shoot them, and then that'll just give you the more direct paths to be able to come in on them, like just dash and grab, because they're not expecting it. They were expecting you to like Rebel's Guard last second, or decide to do a certain way approaching them last second.
That definitely makes sense, because like that definitely adds like a level of ambiguity. So it's like sometimes taking the most like direct path to the win condition is just going to be obvious, and the opponent's going to be able to play around it. So almost like taking the less rewarding route almost seems like a way to, it's like a path to eventually convince them that your main win condition isn't going to be there, and then you could eventually, well, once they've let their guard down, essentially you could go ahead and start to get those bigger punishes.
Yep, precisely. And that's why I have like these two photos up here, for example, too. I'm sure you've heard of Dragon Ball Z, so that's the one on the right, but have you heard of Hajime no Ippo?
Nah, I actually haven't.
Okay. It's definitely a great anime that I would suggest anyone to actually watch if they like concepts of like, seeing concepts of kind of like Haikyuu, the soccer, not soccer, the volleyball anime. That a lot of people like it.
I've actually been watching a little bit of Haikyuu. I really enjoy it.
Oh, dope. So yeah, so you can, I was about to say, I think like this would be like technically the OG of like, learning of like, Smash players like learning from like an anime, because this was like around like in the 90s for this one. But as you're seeing like in the photo, like in the GIF on the left, Ippo's the one who's actually doing what's the feint right here. But basically, the other boxer, I can't remember his name right now, but this is like from the 3rd season. He's expecting Ippo to come straight forward, because Ippo's been selling him the idea that he's been coming forward with like, straight jabs to the lump, or like to the to the body, like not right jabs, but actually like right straights to the stomach. So he takes it thinking he's going to be there, and then the after image is what he was expecting, but instead Ippo hits him with an upper from below the body. So that's one example of selling someone feints, is by actually giving them, like we said before, different ways that you're actually coming in. Like, sure, he's been punching him in the stomach with his rights before, but like he's never done it with with his left, like doing like a upper. So that was something he wasn't expecting. So showing them different ways of actually coming in is like one of the best ways to get them flustered. Same thing with the example here on the right, like with Goku just like instant transmission everywhere. During all those times, he could have actually attacked, but he decided to instant transmission like say 3 times before he actually attacked there. So he showed different timings of when he could actually come in and decide to attack right there. But that's basically what I have for for feints, is that the biggest thing is just that you want to actually give them, basically you have to first sell them what it is that they should be afraid of, and then after that you have to mix up from there the timing of when you'll do attacks or approaches, which is like, as we said, short hops, dashes, and shields, doing manual or fixed timings, like by using either different attacks on shields, or like different attacks like as you're landing down when you actually get them to be afraid, or different unique ways that they have to think about punishing you. Like, let me go back into the game and I'll show, for example, and let's have Robin do this. Okay, so let's have Robin do this. Okay, so I'll make her flinch. So, reset again. So let's say, for example, like you're saying, like what you do in gun. And let's do neutral special. And this should be character item for CPU. Oh, that actually won't work. But basically, like, let's say that like you're actually pressuring them, that you might actually decide to approach, like in a certain situation. Oh, I know why. Because we still have control on. Oh, and I forgot that they actually do like to do this. So instead of they're mashing it. So what are some of the ways that you like to actually try to get around, say like if someone's shooting charge shot, or say like, if you play the Robin, what would be like some unique ways you try to actually say you would get around them shooting a spell?
So generally speaking, I think I'm not entirely super creative when it comes to it. I usually either tend to just be basic and shield, and then try to slowly move in, or I'll just try to do like a full hop.
Okay, so like you'll say like you either try to approach like by like shielding, or you'll actually like try to full hop over. Okay, so those are definitely options that like you can definitely do, because there's a ground option, there's an air option, so that's a mix up right there in and of itself. That makes them have to actually think, okay, well now I have to check the air anytime at this range, because you can jump in and you can just punish them for shooting right there at a certain timing, if you know when they're actually going to shoot their spells. Or you can maybe just try and dash in and shield, depending on like which spell it is that they use. Of course, it's just matchup thing. It's hard to actually do that against Arc Thunder, but maybe some more unique ways that you can actually think about trying to actually get in on Robin that would make them think very hard about trying to get you, or like try to stop you, is down tilt, for example.
That's very true.
Because I've seen that.
Yeah, no, I underestimate how much it low profiles against like projectiles.
So yeah, so that's a unique thing that Joker himself has in like certain matchups that like say against same thing like against like say a Samus, if they don't wait to like the full charge, they try to do like smaller ones that you can actually slide underneath and then start combos from, you can do something like that. Or, you know, roll past them, because this is what I think rolls are really good at. It's like when you're actually running and you know an attack is coming, so you're able to actually roll past it and be able to punish them afterwards that way.
Yeah, roll's actually a really good option once you get into like a range where you can like get behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've always described Joker's roll as a teleport.
Yep, it basically is.
It's absurdly long.
So yeah, so hopefully,
Yeah, that's very true.
so yeah, hopefully those things I think will help out with that idea for Feints. Do you have any more questions about that, or?
At least for right now, I really like what we like talked about, because I was kind of like, as you were discussing, I was kind of like reflecting on different scenarios in which I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get in here, and sometimes I kind of just default to choosing the same couple of options without really like mixing up my timings too much. And after this, I'm definitely just gonna try to go through some common scenarios and see different ways I can just come up with something different, mix some timing, all sorts of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And we can make that just like, say, like a thing that, yeah, like you said, just like a little homework thing, is try to focus on, you know, what are, so if we add that into there, what are different ways you can approach, what are different ways you can mix up timing, would just be like, you know, or like what, instead of like what different ways, is like what are moves you can use for different timings. Different timings. Alright, so next thing here. So we have feints. So now we're on to the next one. This one is, you were talking about how you have ways to actually try to, as you're saying, you have ways to actually try to open, different ways to pressure people, open them up. But you said something interesting about like how you felt like you weren't often in the driver's seat. So it's time to find out who's driving the Uber. Who's that driving over there?
Did you make this meme for it?
Yeah, who's that driving over there to Arsene? Why is my Uber taking me to Arsene?
that is Joker.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a question here, basically. Do you know how to tell who is the person in the driver's seat of a matchup?
That is a good question. You know, I don't know. That's a good question.
Oh, well, I was about to say you should, because we've actually discussed it before, not in the session, but afterwards. So it's in your Discord messages. So you can go ahead and take a look, and I'll wait. In the meantime, I'll swap back over to the game here.
Alright, yeah, so if I'm looking at the meme, taking context from that, I'm trying to remember other stuff. It's me when I have Arsene, right?
What's up?
So the answer is essentially Arsene. So when I have Arsene, I'm in the driver's seat, essentially.
Kind of. I mean, when you do have him, it does change things up to let you be in the driver's seat, but it's more so about like whether certain things that you can figure out from playing someone, or like thinking about a matchup that tells you who's in the driver's seat. Because it deals with neutral, and it's 3 specific things that happen, or like 3 specific things into it. If you forgot or you can't see it in there, it's no problem. We can talk about it.
Okay, I see. It's projectile range and frame data, right?
Yep. So basically, these 3 things tell you how to actually figure out a matchup. And right now I'm going to actually swap over to a custom stage I use for, I do coaching for students. here in Elkhart, so that way this might actually make it easier to see the idea. So let's see. Let's move over to stage builder. So this stage that I made here is the one that I call ranges. And let's go ahead and test and change characters. Because what this stage is going to show us is basically the idea of like ranges and like how you have to actually think about them when you're going into a matchup. So let's go back into good old. Where's he at? Oh yeah, that's because he got rid of the Mii's. That's why. I was about to say the menu looked a little different.
Better without him.
I wouldn't say exactly. Now, let's see here. Oh, and then I'm probably going to have a, give me one moment, because I'm probably going to have a second controller so the CPU doesn't move. Alright, I'm back. So, let's say for example, real quick, what is a matchup that you say that, so we'll do examples on this stage. What is a matchup that you say you have the advantage? Like, you feel like you're always in the driver's seat.
Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's swap over to Donkey Kong then. Alright, and so why do you say Donkey Kong?
So, in general, his frame data and certain aspects, he's pretty easy to punish with like even basic things like shield and like I have a lot of time to react to the whiff punish. His disadvantage is really bad. But I guess if we're sticking with just like neutral in general, I feel just a lot of his commitments are kind of unsafe. He can be beaten with like shield pretty easily, and he's just he doesn't really have like he has like decent range, but like even his backer's not gonna go through like my backer. Just whenever I do get my hits, this is really rewarding.
Okay.
And I feel like I don't have to try super hard. Well, around him more than other characters, I just play into shield a lot.
Okay. So you kind of listed a couple good things, definitely a lot of good things there. Especially what you're saying about like how DK is the one that will always have to. He basically, you said that he has bad approaches. What is it that you do that forces him to approach?
Essentially, just like I feel against like DK, I can get away with just whiffing more and just like owning my space because he has to commit way harder than me to find an opening generally.
Okay. What would like?
And then when he does commit, it's generally less safe.
But like, what moves in particular is it that you do that you can do that forces him to come to you, while you don't have to approach him?
Definitely gun.
Yep.
So gun is a big thing that he's like, alright, what are you gonna do about this? Generally, they try to like I said, shield in general is really good. I feel like in certain instances, aside from his backer, sometimes he's not the hardest character to air. So keeping him grounded is really effective, because then sometimes I feel if they get desperate, they're just gonna try to fish for dash attack, and if I'm expecting dash attack, it's not super bad.
Okay.
Like DK definitely has means to anti-air, but I feel I feel really comfortable in the air too, because sometimes they'll go for like a lot of tilts, and then a lot of DK's tilts, like let's say they like whiff a tilt, I can pretty easily like land on top of them with something.
Mm-hmm. And it's all because of that, like you said, like basically gun. Because as we were just casually talking, I got a perfect 30% on DK. And then the other, what's another tool? Because he's got another one that can force approaches, or like stop certain approaches.
Let's see.
I hear he's a good.
Dash back.
Well, not that. It's about to say it's another projectile. I'm here. He's a good snapper too at the club, at the Jazz Fest.
Side B.
Yep.
Yes, side B is definitely good in certain instances. Though sometimes I find myself using it a bit too much, so I'm trying to tone down my usage a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in moderation, it can be really good.
Right. Yeah. So these two things themselves. So I brought it on the stage because I wanted to actually talk about like how you can kind of think of matchups and like be more prepared for matchups in the future. So that way you don't have to actually like playing them definitely is the best experience, but you don't have to actually play. You don't have to actually go blind into a matchup just because you couldn't play someone a DK online or you couldn't play a certain character online or in person to know it. So gun and side B. These are two tools that are projectiles that ultimately force DK to approach you because he doesn't have his own projectile. He doesn't have coconut gun, and he does not have any barrels that he can pull out. So he has to come and approach you. So you're able to actually chip at him and watch how he is approaching you because of that. So that already gives you the advantage in this matchup. So I brought it to the stage because how the matchup changes to like someone's favor based on where you are like positioned on the stage. So at like the beginning of the game, like most of the time you'll be like neutral positions. There'll be something like this on FD where like you're at this set position where if you're in this green area, I'll call this basically mid range. This range is where you'll both be basically fighting to actually do certain things. DK is going to fight to get closer to you, and you're going to fight to maintain this space or call out his approaches in a certain way. So like you're going to chip at him with gun, maybe you'll do some side Bs if you feel like he's not going to, approach you. Or like if it's a certain way that he's going to approach that you can stuff it, you'll decide to dash in. Which is normally something you don't want to do against DK, but if you know how he's going to approach, you'll dash in and you'll stop how he's going to approach or stay in place. Like he's going to dash attack or he's going to actually just run in at a certain time. You'll F tilt or you'll dash attack yourself, or maybe you'll jump over and you'll start combo off of Nair. Now the matchup changes when we both kind of get into like this blue area. Because who wins here?
Definitely DK.
Yep. Because not only, and sometimes he can maybe even win here, like in this darker green area. Because the thing about it is that, say he does, like, say we do F tilt here. So, like mine barely whiffs if I actually do it here. But let's say if DK does any of his tilts, it's the same thing, but like it's a lot scarier. Because the thing about it, if I'm not sure if you realize this, a lot of DK's moves have arm intangibility. So that's why you can't actually. That's why it's very difficult to actually do anything against DK, because a lot of his moves in like his up air, like moves that involves his head, or basically anything he does, he's almost like he is basically base game Kazuya when it comes to intangibility on a lot of his stuff. Because F tilt has intangibility, and you see like it has good range on it. It's just like your F tilt too, but because it also has intangibility, it can be sometimes hard to contest it. So, but back to this area about the blue, he's basically going to win because he gets to be able to try and contest you like with grabs and things like that. So you're going to be trying to actually, in this situation, push him away either by running away yourself or doing attacks to push him away. Because the chance because you winning in this area when you don't have Arsene, for example, it's very difficult. So unless you have Arsene and like you have him very scared of you, you really don't want to be in this situation right next to him to just get grabbed and just have combos started that way. So that's close range. So what would the red area be then?
When they're in the corner, or just like long range.
Yep. So this is long range. And contrary to belief, not many people would say that zoners want to actually stick at this range, but actually they don't want to stick at this range, because what happens if you're just sticking at this range as a zoner? If, say, example, Samus just shoots a charge shot.
You could easily react to it.
Yeah. So long range, I don't per se is like the range you want to actually just completely fight at. Maybe Min Min might be the exception because of how arms actually work, but I'd say she'd probably just move right here, and this would be like technically her long range, because I think like arms still might not even connect here from this far, besides Dragon. So yeah, long range is basically just either the set up range, or it's basically just like either set up range, or it's actually trying to actually whiff punish, or not whiff punish. It's basically just set up range for it. So like, you jump back, give yourself space to actually shoot Aha, so you make it a lot safer. Diddy runs back here to get Banana. Robin runs back here to charge up, then comes back into this range because now they're stronger. Samus build up charge shot just enough, so that way they can start playing like charge up mix-ups in mid range to keep you out. So these ranges partnered with thinking about like what is like, say your character's like strongest options. Like Joker at this range, like he has gun and Aha like when he jumps back. So now DK, he's pissed about it, so he wants to come in and he wants to actually get you to be this range, so that way he can actually use his tilts a lot more to actually attack you. Knowing just like what are their strongest tools like in certain certain ranges, and then knowing at which range that you are weaker at, and you decide to have to move into a different range in order to actually be able to fight, is things that you should actually think about. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of like recognizing, of course, I like to play mid range, but I also have to take into account where my opponent wants to also be playing, and how I can generally, like, an idea that I sometimes struggle to implement is the idea of not necessarily always playing just to land a hit, but to get into a more favorable situation. So maybe it's less about finding my way in necessarily just through hitting them, but like finding, okay, so how am I going to get back to like my advantageous mid range against like a character like DK. And then instead of trying to just like, all right, let's just try to hit him. I just gotta have faith in the positioning, and then just stack the odds in my favor.
Yeah, and trust in the advantages that you have. So as long as you know when you're in a certain range, what is it that you being in this range makes you strong, that will actually as long as you know what your strengths are, like both your strengths are, like you and like just thinking about the other characters, what might be their strongest strengths are in a certain range is, that'll let you know just straight off the bat who should be winning at this range and which ranges, like you're saying, you should be avoiding. And just add on to like the thing about like feints, basically, from like what we're doing before, like say like you're using guns like to actually like get people like to pester them. If you're noticing, like as I'm just doing gun, I'm just short hopping them and just landing afterwards. I think the thing that makes that strong about it is that you can easily just decide to fake that you're not going to shoot a gun, or that you're not going to jump back side B. So if you're having, say like you have a DK that likes to do dash attacks because they're seeing that you're jumping side B back, you could easily just short hop back, not do anything, and then punish. Because that's the feint itself. The short hop, not knowing what it is that you're going to be doing from it, is the feint. Same with if you're shooting gun and you're seeing that like they're dashing in and shielding from that. Like you're shooting gun and they dash and shield, instead of opting for gun in that situation, you can just short hop and just go for a grab immediately, because it's hard to react to like Joker fastballing and going for doing anything.
Yeah, because he's got that privileged fastball.
That unreactable one, basically. But that's all that. Yeah, that's all that I have for that about like ranges and trying to figure know who gets to actually do, knowing which person is more dominant in a matchup. I'll actually go back. Let's see. Yep, back to this, because there's a photo that I used further below. I think I showed you this before. And then let's enlarge into it. There we go. Beautiful quality. So, a character like Joker, for example, I know you probably can't read the text next to it, but he's listed in the, if you go from top to bottom, he's listed in the fourth list, which is Opportunist, who's a character that is good offensively and defensively, but it doesn't, they're not like, they're per se, they have good skills offense and defense, like can be aggressive and defensive, but they don't have certain special tools like other characters below them that are more aggressive, like say Pikachu, Thunder Jolt, Roy and Chrome's like airspeed and disjoints like all the time, or Falcon Side B, or like zoning things like Samus, to be able to just completely be one or the other. So that's why thinking through matchups as any characters in that list is really important, to actually just think about what's the strongest tool in these certain situations. And that's why characters in that list are, I'd say more often than not, the more fundamental characters, because they have to think about those things a lot more often.
So in the situation we were just discussing with DK, and we kind of established that like when Joker plays the mid range, he is kind of dominant. In like, let's say I'm playing like a character like, we'll say like Samus, who's arguably like more dominant in the mid range. Would my goal kind of be different? I'd try to focus more on being in the close range.
Yep. That's basic, and this will go into that point that you're asking about, like trying to actually fight against people who are also being because it goes back into feints, because feints, the biggest thing about feints also is that feints work the best against people who are more patient or who are zoners. Because remember what the story that I was telling you before about like how if someone was not taking my feints or like my zoning or anything like that, like me just running in and running back, and they're not taking my feints, if they did the exact same thing to me, or if I got impatient enough, I would just full on run in and be aggressive, and they would just punish me for it. That's how you get zoners, is because by default with a zoner, this is how messed up zoners are in a lot of fighting games. I'm just going to choose where, they're at the very top. I'm going to choose Samus. I start the game in advantage. Because I have, that's why people get so mad at zoners, is because they start the game in advantage. I have Zaire, I'm shooting missiles. All I have to do literally is just like when the match starts, is like either decide to like dash back a little bit, charge up, jump back Zaire or something like that. If it's FD, put out an aggressive option. I'm basically at home, and you're already at disadvantage, have to approach me. So that's why against zoners, feints work really well, because you're trying to actually punish them when they do like their very committal things. Actually, I should stay serious. Because let's say, for example, going back to that example of like, say if it was, we're now with DK here, but like say if it was Joker instead, like, you know, that thing I told you about, like doing down tilts to bypass Samus doing charge shot. If it's at least it's you know, low enough, that's probably one that he could actually go under. Definitely that one. He could do that, and now because the fact that you can down tilt me if say like we're at like this range as Joker, if it was Joker, I'd have to be wary of that. So I either have to jump back, try the nair, or I'd have to, like, you know, just straight up cancel and shield. And now because I'm scared of just that one option, you now have liberty to, like, say for example, run in and go for a grab if you see what it is that I'm doing after I'm doing my charge shot. So your role will change from the biggest thing, like with roles, is like whoever's is in the driver's seat, that person gets to dictate what's going on. So it's because I'm at my preferred range, I get to do whatever I want. I get to choose charge shots. I get to do whatever I want, basically. And since you're the passenger, you have to watch and see what I do after my strongest option. So if I'm doing charge shots and I'm just faking them, I'm never shooting them, then you can just easily just run in and just dash attack because I'm just doing feints like the charge shot. Or if I, or instead of doing that, like say like when you approach me and you're like trying to actually do something, for example, like you try to jump into the air and you notice that my reaction to you jumping in the air is I'm going to immediately forward air. That's the usual Samus thing. Then the next, say you get hit by fair, the next time you try to jump in, that's when you add the feint of double jump, or where instead of actually instead of actually like full on jumping towards me, jumping forward, leaning back a little bit and fast falling. So that way they basically whiff just as soon as you land, and you can either shield or you're going to be right below them or something, and then be able to do your up airs or do any attack basically.
That definitely makes sense. So it's like being more conscientious of like what they're doing, like what kind of things your movement or options are provoking, and then looking at that. Makes sense.
Okay. So that's good, because that goes then into the next topic that we wanted to talk about, because I think that covered all of them, but Feints, who's in driver's seat. Oh well, haven't talked about dealing with shields like that extensively. But did you feel like what we talked about with Feints earlier helped with that, or do you feel like we need to talk about it a bit more?
I think we could probably go over it like just one more time, like get a bit more in depth with it.
Okay. So how do you normally get punished for shielding? So like is it like they grab you whenever you do aerials on top of their shields? Is it a certain way that you are pressuring their shield, like doing aerials above it, or like trying to space them and be below?
So generally, of course, like the goal though in execution, it's not always gonna be perfect. I try to auto cancel my aerials and make it to where I'm not just giving them for free out of shield punish. But oftentimes I feel like shield can really slow my pace down, because if I land on a shield, I'll be like, let's say I land with neutral, I'm gonna be -5, and then I can't really get too much of like a good follow up on pressure. So it kind of like, if I do want to aggressive start, making my way in and getting an advantage, shield kind of really bogs that down, because then just by holding shield, I can't really directly follow up if I land an aerial, for example.
Okay.
And then they once again get to, of course, after I land with my aerial, I kind of have to see what option they have next, and I feel oftentimes they'll end up just taking it back with a safe out of shield option, then we're back to playing neutral and boxing.
Okay. So hold shield for infinite. I think they have something buffered. Yep, you have neutral beat, which that's interesting, Kirby. I've never seen a Kirby do something like that on shield.
Neutral beat out of shield.
they'd be crazy. Well, at least just a grounded one. Aerial one, that wouldn't be that bad of an option if they're kind of going to be defensive afterwards. So basically, like you're saying, like you'll do like your aerial, you'll try to space it as best as you can against them, but then maybe you're not sure what to do after you do like space it afterwards.
Yeah, that's kind of a fair assessment. Like, what kind of like good options do I have to deal with what they do out of shield since I'm like at a frame disadvantage?
Well, funny thing about that, also I think he's tilting his shield. I don't know why he is. No, I don't think he is. Well, it's just because he's so short, so I'm going to make him tilt his shield to be slightly to the left. Okay, he's not going to listen, but that's fine. But well, I guess we kind of need to understand how much do you understand about like frame data's with shield in this game?
I feel like a decent bit.
Okay.
At least in terms of like the numbers, yeah.
Okay. So what would you say is like a number? I guess like what would you say is the most the safest that an option has to be in this game in order for you not to get punished?
I think generally like -7 or -8 is the cutoff.
I say that's a good number. Because like the best thing out of shield is frame 3, which is like Mario. Well, one of their up Bs has changed, but it normally has been like Mario up Bs, Low Max up B out of shield, and Meat Brawlers up B. Actually, let's just say Game & Watches. So, Game & Watches up B out of shield. In fact, let's actually bring him out, so we can mess with that.
I'm gonna bring him out.
Yeah. So, Game & Watch. So first off, I'm not going to have him do it. I'm going to have him instead. Okay, but he's in tilted shield. That's nice of him. Okay. Okay. So on average, most of the time, you can say like you can probably with good spacing, you can maybe get your bear to be like somewhere between like say 7 to 9. Like 6 maybe is the absolute best. I don't know what his actual best is if he actually does his bear. Maybe it is 6, but so let's say on average, because of human error, you'll probably get it like to be -8 or -9 or something like that. That is still, like you said, 7, 8. That's probably still good enough to be safe. Because the best things that someone can actually do to punish you afterwards, on average, is some type of aerial. And if you can be able to do your attack and shield right after, then there's nothing that they can do against that. Especially when you space it, because they can't grab you if you decide to actually shield. So besides like characters like Game & Watch, who have a B option out of shield, you spacing around it already is good. Is the best answer for those. So let's have him do right there. Okay. Yeah, because doing it right on top of him is going to get you punished. So that's why you spacing it out like this is going to keep you safe all the time against this character. But if, say, for example, they do not decide to do that, they don't have like that fast option, but at the same time, you don't have you're not sure what it is that they're going to do afterwards, because that's what we're trying to find out. There is good options. There is kind of like a game plan you can set up with that itself. Because have you ever seen Light, whenever he plays Foxes, he'll go into back air and then he'll go into immediate up tilts a lot of times. On shield.
It's like Fox has like those really good shield pressure options, yeah.
Yeah. The reason that it's so good is because yeah, it's like most characters cannot punish that option. So he's just going to go ahead and go for the up tilt, because if they're going to do any option out of shield, most often they're going to get punished for it. Because like back air, let's say we just go ahead and just go. Let's look into Fox frame data for a second, and then let's find some things out. So ultimate frame data. Fox. And let's say back air. Okay, so -4. So probably for him 5 or 6, or we'll say like 6 to be generous. So that's not going to be able to be punished, especially if he spaces that. Unless it's like, you know, Game & Watch or something like. Well, if he spaces it, it may not even be punished then too. So, but he won't do this setup on them. So for characters that like frame 6 or slower options out of shield, he will just immediately go into another up tilt, which that's frame 3. So this setup basically goes like this. If you decide to go for your option out of shield, if it's slower than, what is that, 1, 2, so it's adding 3 extra frames. So if your option is not 7 or better, this up tilt is going to hit you if you do an option out of shield. So that means also that this will catch jumps. If people like to jump out of shield going into this immediately, this will catch most aerials for characters that are like -7 or something like that. So this is a strong setup. What this means afterwards is that if he does this and he notices that like during the up tilt that you shield afterwards, he's just going to go into back air, or he might even not even do back air. He just knows you hold shield longer, so he'll just short hop grab you instead of actually playing into like back air and try to do something to mess with mix-ups. So Joker can maybe do the same thing too if we messed around with it enough. Like let's say for example, his thing is, let's say, I think he still has up B. So, okay, he doesn't. So his thing that maybe he can actually do. Most characters will actually like, you know, do a back air and dash back. Some things that maybe he can decide to actually do is go for a jab right after, or even decide to, I think most commonly is do back low hit back air into like a rising back air, because this might actually catch
back air.
Yep, because this will basically catch people doing options out of shield, and the way that he can probably find this out usually is by just setting up the pressure of just doing one back air spaced as much as he can so they can't punish him, and then decide to like stay, like just kind of like stay right here because there's nothing that they can do immediately out of shield to punish it, or do the back air dash back and see what happens. So let's say we set this up right now. Follow up. Let's not do up B this time. Let's have him do not neutral special. That'd be weird. Okay. So he's going to be doing Nair out of shield now. So we do back air on the shield. We dash away. There's no way that this was ever going to hit us anyway, because the other thing is it starts at the very top of the hitbox. So if we're seeing that he actually does something like this, we can now, during the dash back, we notice that he's doing the neutral air out of shield. Maybe we can decide to see, okay, what if we do, okay, so we can't do back air, but we can be able to dash back like we were doing before, then come back in with an attack, like dash attack. Or maybe we come back in and do fair confirms. So timing's basically a little hard for me, but that could be something that maybe you could look at as a possible punishment on someone. If you,
Yeah, because I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. So I think a big missing piece of like my dealing with shield is like, admittedly, I don't think I'm the best at spacing, and I think I'm missing out on a lot of these like opportunities that you're kind of showcasing right now. If I'm kind of like landing directly on top of them, I almost feel like I have to be the one to back off. Whereas by landing with a space like back air, for example, I have more control over the situation, because then it just becomes a matter of, okay, so I know they're gonna do, say, I get some information, I'd like to do this out of shield, then I kind of have the answer ready to it. Whereas if I'm just landing directly on top of them, I'm not gonna get that opportunity in the first place, and I'm likely just gonna either get hit or have to hold their mix up now.
Yeah, because if you go too deep into their shield, I'm still able to get away because he's doing a really slow option. But say if this was a character, what if, say we swap to, say, Mario, like Yoshi, for example, his option would be frame 6. So me landing on his shield like this, I would most of the time get punished if it was against Yoshi. And we'll just swap out for visual reference for it too. Nope. We stay Joker and we get Yoshi.
Yeah, because like in a lot of these situations that you're kind of showcasing, I feel they don't come off like super often for me, because I feel like I'm not always like spacing my aerials as well as I could be. And, you know, of course, like I was thinking, oh, just space your aerials, dummy. But oftentimes, I feel like it's something I'm neglecting, and I'm missing out on a lot of favorable situations because of it.
Right. Yeah. So this perfect example here. If I am perfect with my spacing, well, like if I don't space this at all, I don't have enough time to shield this. I'm going to get punished every time, because like we said before, the best I can do is, it could be even better than 6, but the best that I've been able to do as we've been messing around is 6. So I have to be extremely perfect in order to actually shield this right after. And there's no way to expect someone to actually be able to perfectly shield, well, like to be able to perfectly do their aerials on someone's shield all the time, like mid-game and things like that. Well, on the opposite, it's easier for someone in shield to do this because they can just buffer it, anything that hits their shield. So they'll always have their frame 6 option, like Yoshi, out of shield, because they can buffer it, anything that hits their shield. So now instead of landing it, like we said, exactly on top of him, if we space it as well as we can either maybe avoid it, because in order for him to actually hit me with that out of shield, he would have to jump forward and hit me, which maybe he still can, because I've done that before for like certain moves, but now that's a lot harder to do. And if we do that game plan we were trying to do before, also our sim backer is probably a lot safer, so I'll still get punished by that. But basically, if we do that game plan we were doing before of like run away like this, and we notice that the nair comes out, we can stay, instead of running away, we can stay closer like we're trying to think of some options that we can do to punish around it.
Yes, like there we go. You were able to get like the backer out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is precise, but
Right, but yeah, you get the idea from that.
definitely.
So is there any other questions about that, like fighting with shields, or?
I suppose, I guess I kind of answered my own question in my head. I was thinking, okay, so what if they like don't want to hold shield, because you know the end reward is obviously, ideally you'd want maybe start getting like grabs out of it if they start to hold shield, but I feel oftentimes they aren't gonna just want to hold shield when you're pressuring them, and they're gonna try to get out of that situation. Then I think once you establish that, like let's say I did the back air and then the rising back air and Yoshi held shield, and then you just punish it when it comes after it. But then add the layer on top of it. So like let's say I do the back air, then I immediately go to grab, because then I've already established that if he does nair on a shield immediately, he's gonna eat the second back air.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll be like, oh, I'll punish the second back air, and I grab him.
Yep.
Something like that, like that as an example.
Yeah, because then it loops around into a rock paper scissors then, which the I think what it also you're trying to get at too is also like safer. It goes back to the example when we first started. Like, you know, why would if someone is full hopping and coming in to do an aerial, and it's like, you know, a safe aerial like this on shield, instead of having to deal with this situation like this, most characters would try to actually punish them as they're in the air. So I would jump out of shield or get out of shield and jump after and up air you. So, and if that's what happens, instead of that happening, we go back to what I said at the very beginning of the session, is that I would, instead of doing like a falling aerial, I would then go for a rising aerial. Because I know you're going to try to rise and hit me with something, so I'm going to beat you to it and do my destroying attack against you, so that way you don't have a chance to actually hit me. So basically taking advantage of that. And then what beats that, if I'm deciding to actually do a rising aerial, is you staying in shield to punish the rising aerial, because rising aerials are a lot easier to punish on shield. Oops. Even though it's harder for Yoshi, like you saw, like there's time because I have to land back down after it. So rising aerials will beat someone who's trying to do something out of shield preemptively, as long as you space yourself around it, but loses to someone who stays in shield and knows that you're going to try to beat them from doing something out of shield like that. And then
Right.
Yep.
And then you're back to like playing Smash.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful.
All right. And then the last point, which I think is one of the biggest ones too, if we go back to it, is you had a question about purpose in movement. So my question for you about that purpose in movement is, let's go back to the game actually. What are some things per se that you how would I want to word this actually? What are some things that what are some things? When you are actually playing like playing Smash and you're making your decisions, what do you feel like that you're always thinking that you're doing a movement, like have a decision in mind when you move? Or do you don't think so?
So, generally speaking, I feel a lot of times when I am moving, there's not like too much of a thought process behind it in like specific situations. Like for example, like let's just take the shield example. Like let's say I did a landing back air that was spaced. Yoshi does nair on shield. I dash back. I get a punish on the dash in. Like I don't always think about, like I can think about like what kind of reactions my moves are provoking, but when it comes to things like what kind of reactions are my movements provoking, it becomes a lot less a lot more like cloudy.
Okay.
Though I think we kind of touched on it earlier, where it's like once you make them afraid of that, it's like let's say as a random example, let's say I do like dash back into a dash attack. Like once I hit them with a few more times with that, they're gonna think, okay, he's dashing back, he's gonna dash attack. But then I can play on that and turn it into something else and punish what they would do. Like let's say it just shielded it, then I would do a dash back, dash grab or something.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of along those lines.
So if we go by that example, then what is, like, could you give like the example of like what would be the purpose in that example of doing the dash back then?
So I guess the purpose of the dash back is I guess generally just to face around an option that they do, and like out of shield just so I'd avoid getting hit there.
Mm-hmm.
While being able to almost in certain situations like react and be able to go in with an option that can deal with it.
Yeah. Um, you basically hit it on the head, because how you have purpose in your movement is that the biggest way that you actually have purpose in your movement, or like in your decisions, is you ultimately look at what it is that your opponent is doing. Because a lot of people say that, well, because here's the thing: what are fighting games? Who is involved with in fighting games?
Two humans.
Precisely. It is two humans that are involved in the fighting game. So therefore, there is two players on the screen making decisions. And how people should actually think about, like, when they're making their decisions, is looking at their opponent and seeing what it is they are doing and basing their decisions off of that. So, like you said before, you're seeing that, oh, Yoshi is, like we said with this example, Yoshi is shielding, so I'm going to back air, dash back, and see what happens. So that way I can tell what I will actually do, the next time that this happens. So he jumps out of the shield and does nair, I'm going to back air immediately afterwards, or dash back a little bit and come back in and attack him. I almost basically say it, the best way I remember it for me is that I basically ask myself, how does my opponent want me to beat their ass?
How does my opponent want me to beat their ass?
Yeah, it's basically that. How do they want me to beat them? Because if I'm noticing, like, from like just both of us like playing around, because yeah, that's basically how it is. It's like I do back air and I dash back. Oh, you jump out of shield, so that means that you want me to punish it by X, Y, Z. So, and I know how to punish this by doing X, Y, Z. So I'm going to decide to set up the situation again, dash attack you, because you have this tendency when we're in this situation to nair out of shield. So that's the biggest way of how you can actually be able to figure out purpose in movement, just like Shorten, is that you're basically watching how your opponent reacts to how you are moving and things like that, and how their movement makes you react. Because it goes in the order of like being able to move yourself in good positions in order to actually be able to punish people, so that way you don't get punished yourself. And then the next thing is knowing, because if you know how they are moving, like I said before, it tells you how you're supposed to punish them, not what punish you want to do. Because I think that's the biggest thing that sets lots of like mid-level players apart from like higher top players, is that they always want to do, they basically think they're always in the driver's seat, or they basically think they always have to press buttons when you don't have to. Oftentimes it's easier for you if you're just using movement and then picking your fights, picking the times that you actually want to actually press buttons.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back into where it's like before I felt like I had an idea where it's like, okay, so if I move around a lot, yeah, it's gonna add some ambiguity, but if I'm just moving around to move around, it's not really gonna, and I'm not like taking like conscious thought of like what sort of like responses that movement is provoking, and adding layers to it and choosing what to do after. It's not gonna end up leading to anything.
Yeah, precisely. And then oftentimes you'll feel a lot lost in your gameplay because you're not sure what's going on. Um, the best way that I could say also for like when you're choosing like your button, like to help you with the idea of like not pressing so many buttons also, or like making sure you're making decisions, is this is an example that I got from like a Street Fighter vet, James Chan. He has a video about this where he basically says like he thinks of like pressing buttons or decisions as basically you're spending $1. Like you're like economy basically is that every time you make a decision, every time that you move the stick or something like that, you spend $1. So every single time that we move or something like that, these are all decisions that we can't get back basically, because that's what it is when we purchase stuff. Is that we put money down, we buy it. Sometimes we can get refunds, but for very important things, they don't do refunds. So you're out of luck when you use that funds. So if you use, so whenever you buy something, you always want to make sure that whatever it is that you're buying, you make a good decision behind the purchase. So if you, for whatever reason, you, like I ask you, like if we look at a match or something like that, and you're saying like you're just back airing in place, and I ask, just curiously ask you why you're back airing in place, and you're saying I don't know, that's not a good reason. So that means that you shouldn't even be back airing in place if you don't even know why you're doing it in the first place. So you should instead just, maybe just more so, instead of back airing in place, just standing in place then, because that's a lot safer than just doing back airs in place. If you at least don't know the reason why you're back airing.
Um, that example hit close to home because sometimes I feel like when I'm playing at that range, I will just sometimes try to just like throw out back air and take my space, and then like I guess you could argue it's like, oh, it's spacing him out, but sometimes I do question. It's like I'm kind of just doing this to do it. You know what I mean?
Right. But I mean, like, at least because you had a reason there. So that's good, because what that means then is like if we look back at it and you tell me your reason is like, oh, I'm back in place because I want to keep them out. I'll say, okay, that's a good reason, but notice how you backering in place is not. It's just keeping Yoshi for some reason in shield and it hasn't broken yet.
Hmm.
So that means that, oh, okay, so I shouldn't be. The reason is good, but my opponent isn't responding to this. So instead of back air in place from right here, let's back air in place right here. And maybe it might get him scared enough to, do near around the shield just like there. So that's how you can look at your VODs and stuff too. It's like you just basically look at like your decision there and just ask about that dollar. It's like, am I spending this dollar correctly? Am I like, why's the reason am I doing this right here? Like, I know I'm doing it to try and space, but is there a different option that I could be doing in this scenario because they're not responding to it? Or am I just not watching them closer enough? And should I be watching them more in this situation to know what it is that they're trying to do?
Yeah, that's good. I really like that analogy. It makes a lot of sense.
Does this go through? Oh no, it doesn't. Alrighty. So do you have any questions about that as well, or?
Well, I think for at least from that, just I think it's just gonna take a lot of like reflection, as you said. When the opportunity arises, a VOD review. It's a good question because normally I default things like, oh, why did I get hit? So and so, so on and so forth, or why did I give up advantage? Or how did they reversal me? But something as simple as why am I doing this? It could like really get a lot of like thoughts going, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'll also I'll actually not re-say one thing, but I'll actually just put like a little caveat or exception to like the idea of like you doing something and you're not sure why. The only time that this would be okay is if you're a brand new player of either like a brand new game that you never played before. So like say you're brand new to Smash and you won't know all the technical stuff. So the best thing usually for people who are just coming into Smash or like coming into a new game or they're playing a brand new character is to just go look up VODs of like, the best players of those certain characters and just copy what it is that they do. You won't, because in like try your best to maybe paint a situation like what situations that they will use it at. So like say you're brand new to the game, you see Leo playing and you see that he does back airs a lot at this range. You may not know the reason why, but he's not getting punished for it, so you'll just copy it, and then later down the line when you get a lot better at the game, you'll know, okay, he's doing it because it's safe. He can easily dash away at any time, so it's a lot harder for someone to actually mess with this. That's like the only caveat I'd say is like when you're just brand new to the game or like if you're brand new to a character. But eventually you will have to stop being brand new and actually question the reason why that you're doing this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because like to like a new player, they could see like, okay, oh, Joker backer is really good. Let me do a lot of it, and they might even find success with it. But you're not gonna really, you might eventually get stumped if you don't eventually get like a grasp of why you're using it and what makes it good and
Mm-hmm.
like what situations it's good in.
There we go. Well, I think that's basically all of the things for the most part because we talked about Feints, talked about who's driving the Uber, dealing with shields, purpose in purpose and movement there, which I'm happy also for the conversation about feints and approaches because before I think when we talked about it, you were very specific about what is a way to open more passive and defensive players who aren't zoners, which was funny because that's who most passive and defensive players are zoners. Like not just like because I think you were thinking more so of like zoners like sorties like Cloud for example who won't actually like have a disjoint zoning tool instead of a more like how most people see zoners as a projectile zoner like Samus for example. But
Yeah,
you use the same tools to fight each one, so that's why I'm glad you brought up later. You asked a question about like Samus instead of like a Cloud, because it's the same way you fight both of them. It's like introducing different like ways of actually like trying to approach them and different timings of things. Which, funny enough, I had noticed it while I was just messing around here. Let me go back to the screen that like I could actually poke at. Let's go back here. I could actually poke at Yoshi's shield with F tilt, which back air wasn't actually. I couldn't just do one back air and then try to do another immediately. I had to wait a little bit, but because he's expecting only one hit and tries to buffer out, F tilt apparently beats it.
interesting.
Um, so that's just another interesting thing about like with timing is like hits themselves like how many hits does a move do on shield, and if it be able to actually beat it out. But yeah, that's basically all that I think of for the session that we have.
And that's good because like, but when we were talking, I felt like it was kind of in some aspects reiterating like a few ideas I already knew of, but like having you kind of like talk through it again and like refreshing it to me kind of has me like thinking about it again. And I feel like I was kind of getting complacent and I was kind of just doing I was like, okay, here's my game plan. And like we were talking about last time, I've been comfortable with my game plan, but
Yeah.
I felt like I might have been getting complacent and like looking at individual interactions and more importantly, is kind of seeing in these instances what my opponents are doing and like what my choices are leading to
Mm-hmm.
instead of just thinking, okay, so here's my game plan. I'll do this, this, and this. They hopefully do this. I win. I need to just, as funny as it sounds, I just need to play the game and just look at what my opponent's doing more in certain circumstances and be a bit more be a bit more fluent in my play instead of just trying to stick to a basic flow chart. Just being able to talk about these different instances in particular that I feel like I struggle with, I just noticed a common theme of doing stuff without purpose and not like recognizing certain situations. And now I think if I go through, one thing at a time, like let's say, shield pressure and whatnot, what my opponent's doing out of shield,
Mm-hmm.
slowly implementing more stuff like that, putting more thought into it, and maybe even just adding that onto my game plan.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, so all right, so when I'm dealing with shield, take it a step further. Okay, so let's say I do this on their shield, how are they reacting to it? And then try to maybe think about a few different character archetypes and see if there's any like overlap between them to simplify it a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you got think you got yourself a good path right there. I'm sure that you'll be able to figure things out. Because I know you like to be a really good student of the game too. So I'm sure with just us talking about it, you'll get some brand new ideas yourself and see yourself doing a lot of damage over there in NWI.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I see everyone's been like, yeah, I always try to be like super humble because like I still generally don't think I'm like where I want to be yet. And everyone's like, oh dude, you're getting a lot better and stuff. But like I look at my play and I'm just thinking like, dude, there's literally so much more I could be doing. Like so many like I still, you ever like watch your play and like you know not to do something and you're like, wait, why did I do that? You know what I mean? I feel like there's some really like scrub things that I do and I get punished for that I'm still not doing. Like oh, you know, I'm getting better, but I'm still not thinking about like, oh, what's my point doing on shield and stuff like that.
Right,
And it's just a lot of room for growth for sure.
right. And yeah, you'll definitely get there with it. It's just always doing about like just one small step with each thing at a time. So focusing just like on, just one thing at a time instead of actually trying to buckle and try to do everything all at once.
Exactly, because with just general, just anything, you even if like let's say I quote unquote mastered my shield pressure game and I also got a lot better at disadvantage, I might not even see a difference in something like my tournament results immediately,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe like it's hard to have like a tangible like positive result from it. But of course, like once you start implementing more and more things, there's gonna be more factors at hand that might contribute to more success.
Yeah. Awesome there.
Yeah, this is really helpful. This is definitely what I need to kind of like get me thinking about the game again. Because like I was saying, certain aspects I was getting complacent,
Mm-hmm.
and I got some like fresh ideas to work on for sure. And I think definitely next time we talk, I'm definitely gonna try to get a VOD because yeah, because whenever the next session might be, it would have been quite some time since you'd actually seen my gameplay. Because then maybe we could look at, okay, so here's all the things we talked about. Let's see what you're actually doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be look forward to that, for sure. Because I know your gameplay will definitely be different from since last time that we had saw it. So I'd be excited.
Definitely.
Alrighty, well that's basically the end of the session. Did you have any last questions or anything that you had? Yeah, just basically anything that you wanted to ask before we finish up.
I think we're good for now, though. Of course, you know, probably once I think on it more, I'll have some more questions. So I'll definitely hit you up if I got any follow-ups.
Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I will try. I'll go ahead and upload this to YouTube as quickly as I can, and then send it to you as soon as the doc is finished up. Also. Alrighty. But besides that, I am about to get ready to head off to sleep here. Because I've got some work tomorrow, fun stuff.
I feel you. All right, man. I appreciate it as always. Have a good night, bro.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you. You take care.
All right, peace.